The heavy oak door of my own house slammed shut with a sound that felt less like a lock engaging and more like a bone breaking. I stood there, frozen on the front porch, the wind cutting through my thin sweater like it wasn't even there. The red taillights of the limo blurred through the falling snow, already turning out of the driveway, disappearing into the white void. Then my phone buzzed in my hand. One notification. System armed. Perimeter sealed. I looked down. There, fluttering on the railing, weighed down by a cold, gray rock, was a single $50 bill. Just sitting there. Mocking me. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a mistake. This was a sentence. My fingers were already numb as I punched the code into the keypad. I tried again. I was locked out of my own life. I'm reading every single comment today. Tell me, if your parents locked you out in a blizzard to go to Bali, would you call the police immediately, or would you wait for the perfect moment to make them pay? Let me know where you're watching from. My first instinct was to run. To chase the red taillights down the driveway, screaming, begging them to come back. I could feel the scream building in my throat, hot and desperate. But I swallowed it. I swallowed it until it burned like acid in my chest. If I ran, I would just be a hysterical teenager in the snow. If I ran, I would freeze before I hit the main road. And Justin, my father, didn't turn around for hysteria. He only respected leverage. I turned my back on the driveway and looked at the house. My house. It loomed over me, dark and silent, a multi-million-dollar fortress of brick and smart glass. I knew exactly what was happening inside. The eco mode he loved so much was already cycling down the furnace to 55 degrees to save pennies while he spent $20,000 on a tropical vacation. The motion sensors were arming. If I tried to smash a window, the silent alarm would trip. The police would be here in 6 minutes. And that was the one thing I couldn't allow. Not yet. I wiped the snow from my eyelashes and forced my brain to work. Survival first. Revenge later. I couldn't get back into the main house, and the garage code had likely been scrubbed too. But there was one place the smart system didn't reach. One place too dirty, too loud, and too industrial for Justin to bother wiring into his precious cloud server. The pool mechanical room. It was a concrete box tucked behind the hedges, ugly and forgotten. I trudged through the knee-deep snow, my sneakers already soaked through, my toes burning with that dangerous numbness. The wind whipped my hair across my face, stinging my eyes. When I reached the shed, I saw the padlock. A cheap, rusted thing. Justin had spent $50,000 on the perimeter cameras but bought a $5 lock for the pump room because nobody steals pool chemicals. I found a loose landscaping brick half buried in the frozen mulch. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it, but I gripped it with both hands, visualizing the lock was my father's smug smile. I swung. Once. Twice. On the third hit, the hasp snapped. I yanked the heavy metal door open and slipped inside. The noise hit me first. A deafening rhythmic thrumming of the massive filtration pumps. It roared like a jet engine in a closet. Then came the smell, a sharp chemical tang of chlorine and ozone that made my eyes water. But underneath the noise and the stench there was something else. Heat. The massive pumps generated waste heat as they ran, keeping the small, uninsulated room at a steady 60 degrees to prevent the pipes from bursting. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't home. But it was life. I dragged a pile of old, mildewed pool tarps into the corner furthest from the vibrating machinery. I made a nest, curling up into a ball to trap my body heat. My shivering was violent now, my teeth chattering so hard my jaw ached. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my iPad. The screen was cracked, a spider web of glass over the display. 5% battery. I didn't use that 5% to call for help. I didn't call my friends. I opened the camera app. I hit record. The red dot started blinking. I looked into the lens, my face pale, lips blue, hair wet with snow. Day 1, I whispered, my voice barely audible over the roar of the pumps. He locked the doors. He changed the codes. He left me. I saved the video. This wasn't a diary. This was evidence. I stared at the blinking red dot on the screen, listening to the relentless churn of the pumps. My own voice sounded small, fragile, almost swallowed by the industrial noise. But I forced myself to keep speaking. I had to explain why I was here. Why I hadn't just walked down the driveway and flagged down a police car. Flashback to 1 week ago. The kitchen island was polished marble, cold under my fingertips. Justin stood on the other side, holding a manila folder like it was a weapon. He was smiling, but it was that thin, tight smile that never reached his eyes. The smile he used when he was negotiating a deal he knew he'd already won. Madison, he said, his voice smooth, reasonable. We need to talk about your behavior lately. The attitude. The disrespect. I just asked if I could go to the movies with Sarah, I said, looking down at my hands. See? That tone, he sighed, shaking his head. He slid a piece of paper across the marble. It was a printout from the local police department's website. A report form for a missing juvenile. Runaway. You're a troubled teen now, Madison, he said, tapping the paper with a manicured fingernail. I've already spoken to Officer Miller down at the precinct. Told him I'm worried about you. Told him you've been acting out, threatening to leave. If you step 1 foot off this property while we're gone, I've already drafted the report. I looked up at him, my stomach twisting into a cold knot. But I haven't done anything. That doesn't matter, he said, leaning closer. You know the system doesn't believe troubled teens. They see a girl from a good family, a girl with everything provided for her, complaining about rules, and they roll their eyes. If I file this, you go into the system. State reform schools. Foster care with strangers who don't care about you. You'll disappear into state care, Madison. And trust me, you don't want to find out what happens to girls like you in there. He let the threat hang in the air, heavy and suffocating. So, he continued, straightening up and smoothing his tie. You're going to stay here. You're going to be good. You're going to prove that you can be independent and trustworthy. Because the alternative? The alternative is a lot worse than a month alone in a big house. Back in the pump room, I wiped a tear from my cheek before it could freeze. I looked into the camera lens, my eyes hard. He told me the police were his weapon, I whispered. He told me no one would believe me. He told me I was the problem. That's why I'm here. That's why I can't leave. Because I have to prove I'm good. I have to prove I didn't run away. I stopped the recording. My hands were shaking, but not just from the cold anymore. I felt a strange, dark clarity settling over me. He thought he had trapped me with fear. He thought he had silenced me with threats. But he had forgotten one thing. He had taught me to be compliant. He had taught me to be quiet. But he had never taught me to be stupid. I tucked the iPad deep into my layers of clothing to keep the battery warm. I wasn't just hiding in a pump room. I was waiting. And while I waited, I would remember every word, every threat, every moment of cold calculation. Because when the time came, I wouldn't just tell my story. I would show it. Day 3. The silence in the pump room was heavy, broken only by the mechanical heartbeat of the filtration system. I was hungry. Not the kind of hungry you feel when you skip lunch, but a deep, gnawing ache that made my hands tremble. I had found a rusty space heater in the back of the garden shed, buried under old flower pots. It was ancient, the cord frayed, but when I plugged it into the single outlet near the door, the coils glowed a dull, miraculous orange. I huddled in front of it, letting the warmth soak into my frozen skin. For the first time in days, I felt my muscles unclench. I closed my eyes, imagining I was somewhere else. Anywhere else. 10,000 miles away in a 5-star resort in Bali. Justin's phone buzzed. He was probably lounging by an infinity pool, a cocktail in hand, the sun warm on his skin. He glanced at the screen. A notification from the smart home app. High energy usage detected, pool house outbuilding. He frowned. Not with concern. Not with worry that his 15-year-old daughter might be trying to keep from freezing to death. He was annoyed. Annoyed that his perfect, efficient system was being disrupted. Annoyed that I was costing him money. Ungrateful brat, I imagined him muttering to Heather. She's wasting electricity. Probably left the lights on all night just to spite me. With a casual flick of his thumb, he tapped the screen. Remote power cut out buildings. The heater died instantly. The orange glow faded to gray. The single light bulb overhead flickered and went black. I stared into the darkness, the silence ringing in my ears. The cold rushed back in faster and harder than before. I pressed the power button on the heater. Nothing. I checked the outlet. Nothing. It wasn't a fuse. It wasn't an accident. He had turned it off. He had reached across the world and flipped a switch, extinguishing my only source of comfort because he could. Day 5. The hunger was a physical pain now, a constant cramping in my stomach. I heard the rumble of a truck engine outside. I scrambled to the small, grimy window, wiping away the condensation. A delivery truck. A lifeline. I banged on the glass, my fists thudding against the pane. Help. Hey. Over here. The driver hopped out wearing noise-canceling headphones, bobbing his head to music I couldn't hear. He carried a sleek, heavy package to the front porch, set it down, scanned it, and walked back to his truck without once looking toward the backyard. I watched him drive away, tears freezing on my cheeks. I waited until nightfall to retrieve the package, terrified the motion sensors would catch me. I tore it open with shaking hands, praying for food. Anything. Crackers, fruit, chocolate. Inside, nestled in black velvet, was a box of premium Cuban cigars. I sat in the snow holding the box. Cigars. He had remembered to order cigars for himself, to be delivered while he was away, but he had forgotten to leave me enough money for a sandwich. Day 7. I was weaker now. Dizzy when I stood up. I saw a neighbor walking her dog along the perimeter fence. I opened my mouth to yell to beg for help, but then I remembered the iPad. I needed to check. Just in case. I turned it on using the last 1% of battery. I opened the neighborhood Facebook group. There at the top of the feed was a post from Heather. So worried about Madison, it read. She's going through such a rebellious phase. We've heard she might be pretending to be homeless around the neighborhood to beg for money for drugs. Breaks my heart, but we have to be firm. Please, if you see her, ignore her antics. Tough love is the only way we can save her. The comments were full of sympathy. Stay strong, Heather. Kids these days are so manipulative. We'll keep an eye out and make sure no one enables her. I lowered the tablet as the screen went black. The battery died. He hadn't just locked the doors. He hadn't just cut the power. He had built a wall of lies around me so high that even if I screamed, no one would listen. I wasn't just freezing. I was invisible. I curled back up on the tarps, the darkness of the pump room absolute. He thought he was a god controlling his world from a beach chair. He thought he had won. But he didn't know that by taking away my light, my warmth, and my voice, he had given me the one thing I needed most. He had given me a weapon. Day 9. The cold had stopped hurting. That was the scariest part, though I didn't know it then. I felt warm, strangely heavy, like I was sinking into a bath of hot water. I was drifting, floating somewhere between the roar of the pumps and a dream where my mother was actually coming back for me. Then the world exploded. A beam of light sliced through the darkness, blindingly bright. There was a crash as the door was kicked in, the metal groaning against the frame. I tried to curl tighter into my ball, but strong hands were on me. Rough wool. The smell of Old Spice and tobacco. I got you, kid. I got you. The voice was gruff, familiar. Mr. Frank. The neighborhood security captain. The man my father called a busybody relic. I felt myself being lifted effortlessly like I weighed nothing. The cold air rushed in as we left the pump room, but I didn't feel it. I blacked out. I woke up on a couch that smelled like cedar. There was a heavy quilt over me and a fire was crackling in a stone hearth. My hands and feet stung with a prickling, burning pain, the blood coming back. Drink this. Slow. Mr. Frank was sitting on the coffee table holding a mug of broth. He looked terrifyingly angry, his jaw set like granite, but his hands were gentle. Did you call the police? I rasped. My throat felt like it was full of glass. No, he said, his voice low. Not yet. I know your father, Madison. I know about the runaway threat. If I call the cops now, he spins a story about how you broke out and ran off. He controls the narrative. We need to control the evidence first. Frank showed me the proof. He had installed the system himself and secretly created a mirror backup, knowing my father's obsession with control. On the screen was security footage from our kitchen. My father calmly ordering the heat shut off and the garage code scrambled to teach me a lesson. Server logs confirmed it. His admin account, his IP address in Bali, a remote shutdown command with a precise timestamp. He didn't neglect you, Frank said. He tried to hurt you and he left fingerprints. But there was more. My mother had anticipated this. The house wasn't truly his. Buried in the deed was a clause stating ownership depended on the home remaining safe for her heir, me. The moment he cut power and endangered my life, ownership automatically reverted to the trust. Legally, my father stopped being the homeowner that night. When he returned days later, confident and smug, his access was denied. The lights came on, the lawyer stepped forward, and the sheriff followed. He was arrested for trespass and child endangerment, on what he thought was his own property. After they took him away, Frank handed me the real key. Inside, I deleted my father's admin profile for good. His system, his house, his control, gone. He thought technology made him untouchable. Instead, it testified against him. The house didn't protect him. Protected me.